The Alpha King refused his weak mate, until her secret bloodline changed the entire wolf kingdom. Elira Voss had learned, a long time ago, not to expect much from the world. She was the daughter of a healer nobody respected anymore, and she was a wolf who could barely shift into her half-form. In the Kingdom of Thornmere, that made her almost invisible. People looked past her the way they looked past old furniture. She had grown used to it. She told herself it did not hurt anymore. Then the Moon Rite bound her to Kael Ashgrave, the Alpha King. The whole kingdom gathered to watch. Elira stood in a plain gray dress in front of hundreds of wolves in fine silver coats, and she felt every one of their eyes measuring her and finding her lacking. She heard the quiet laughter behind polite hands. She kept her chin up anyway. Her mother had taught her that much at least. Kael did not laugh. That would have been easier to bear. Instead, he looked at her the way a man looks at a bill he did not expect to pay. His eyes were sharp and gray, and for one moment, Elira thought she saw something flicker there. Curiosity maybe, or pity. She could not tell, and it did not matter, because a moment later his face closed like a door. "I cannot mark her," Kael said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. "A king needs a mate who can stand beside him in battle, not one who needs to be protected." Nobody gasped. Nobody was surprised. Elira was not surprised either. She only nodded once, turned, and walked out of the hall with her back straight, refusing to let her steps shake. That night, she asked for a room at the far edge of the castle, away from the king's wing, away from the court, away from anyone who might want to watch her fail again. The castle steward gave her a small room near the old cellars without much comment. Nobody expected her to stay long. Rejected mates rarely did. But Elira had nowhere else to go, and she was not built for running, so she stayed. She filled her days the only way she knew how, by helping. There were always wolves nobody else bothered with. An old guard named Bram had a knee that never healed, right after a training accident. A young Omega girl named Sasha flinched whenever anyone raised a voice near her. A litter of orphaned pups lived in the servants' quarters with no one assigned to care for them properly. Elira went to each of them, quietly, without asking permission from anyone, because healing was the one thing she had always been good at. Something strange started happening, though she did not notice it at first. Bram's knee, which had ached for 6 years, stopped hurting within a week of her visits. Sasha stopped flinching. The pups grew fat and loud and healthy, faster than pups usually did. Elira thought it was luck. The wolves she treated began to think otherwise. "You have a gift," Bram told her one afternoon, flexing his knee like he still could not believe it worked. "A real one. Not the kind they teach in healer's school." Elira laughed it off. "I just paid attention," she said. "That's all healing really is." But word travels quickly in a castle full of wolves with sharp ears. And soon the servants and the guards and the Omegas all knew where to go when something was wrong that the court healers could not fix. Elira did not seek the attention. She simply kept showing up, day after day, for people the rest of the castle had already given up on. Meanwhile, trouble was gathering outside the castle walls. Scouts brought word that the Nightfang Coalition, a rival wolf nation to the north, had begun testing Thornmere's borders. Small raids at first, then bolder ones. Kael spent his days in war councils, his temper growing shorter, his patience thinner. He told himself his mood had nothing to do with the woman he had rejected in front of the whole kingdom. He almost believed it. He noticed her anyway. He could not help it. He noticed the elders speaking of her, with something close to reverence. He noticed the pups in the servants' quarters who used to cry through the night, now sleeping soundly. He noticed, more than once, that when he walked past the cellar corridor near her room, the old stone walls seemed to hum faintly, like they recognized something in the air. He told himself it meant nothing. Kings did not have time for meanings. Then the Nightfang Coalition attacked the castle itself. It happened at night, fast and without warning. Alarms rang through the halls. Guards scrambled to their posts. Kael led the defense at the front gates, his wolves forming lines against the invaders pouring over the walls. It was chaos, shouting, torches, the sound of claws against stone, but Kael had trained for chaos his whole life. What he had not trained for was the moment a second wave of attackers broke through the eastern wall, straight toward the cellar corridor, straight toward Elira's room. She heard the commotion before she saw the attackers. She had no weapon, no training, no wolf strong enough to fight with. She had only her small, plain room and a locked door that would not hold for long. For one terrible moment, she thought this was how it ended. The healer's daughter, forgotten in a cellar, taken because nobody thought to guard her. Then the door broke, and 3 Nightfang wolves came through it, and something inside Elira broke open too. She did not shift. She had never been able to shift properly, not once in her whole life. But she felt something older than a wolf's instinct rise up through her, something that did not come from her own blood, but from 100 years further back. She raised her hand without deciding to, and the ancient stones beneath the castle answered her, and shapes made of moonlight and old memory poured up from the cellar floor. The attackers did not last long against them. When the guards finally reached her, they found Elira standing untouched in the middle of a room that glowed faintly silver, and 3 Nightfang wolves lying defeated at her feet, and no one, not one guard, not one elder, not even Elira herself, could explain what they had just seen. Word reached Kael before the battle had even fully ended. He left the front gates the moment he heard, running faster than he had ever run in his life, and when he reached the cellar corridor he found the old healer, Master Orwin, staring at Elira with an expression Kael had never seen on the old wolf's face before. Awe. She's a Voss, Orwin said, his voice shaking. The last of the Voss bloodline. I thought that line died out a century ago. Kael did not understand. Elira did not either. Not fully. Not yet. But Orwin explained what the old histories said, that long before Thornmere had kings, it had a first alpha, and the first alpha's mate had come from a line called Voss, wolves who were bound not to the moon alone, but to the old wolves, ancient spirits who lived in the land itself, and answered only to that one bloodline. The line had vanished, or so everyone believed, swallowed by war and time. Everyone had assumed it was gone forever. Elira looked down at her own hands like she did not recognize them. I'm not weak, she said quietly, almost to herself. I was never weak. Nobody just knew how to measure what I actually was. The court that had laughed at her during the Moon Rite fell silent when the story spread. The healer's daughter, the discarded mate, was the last living descendant of the first alpha's true partner. She had not needed a strong wolf's body. She had something older and rarer instead. Kael found her the next morning in the small garden behind the cellar, where she often sat when she needed quiet. He did not know how to start. Kings were not raised to apologize. They were raised to decide, and to be right, and Kael had built his whole life around being certain. He was not certain now. I was wrong, he said finally. It came out plain, without excuses, because he did not trust himself to say more without ruining it. Elira did not look up right away. You were wrong in front of everyone, she said. That's the part I remember most. I know. You didn't just doubt me. You made sure the whole kingdom doubted me too. Kael sat down across from her, close enough to speak quietly, far enough not to crowd her. I was afraid, he admitted. Not of you being weak, of needing someone. My father taught me that kings who need people lose kingdoms. I believed him for a long time. Elira studied him for a long moment. She did not offer forgiveness, not yet, because forgiveness handed out too quickly was worth very little. You'll have to earn more than one conversation, she said, but I'll listen to what you have to say. That's all I'm offering today. It was more than he deserved, and he knew it. The Nightfang coalition, having heard the same rumors as everyone else, did not wait long to act. If the last Voss was awake and growing stronger, they wanted her gone before she could grow stronger still. Their next attack came within days, larger than the first, aimed directly at the heart of Thornmere. This time, Kael did not tell Elira to stay behind. This time, he asked her to stand beside him. They fought together at the castle gates, his soldiers holding the line, while the old wolves rose at Elira's call, moonlight given shape and purpose, guarding the walls the ordinary soldiers could not hold alone. Kael fought the way he always had, with skill and discipline, but for the first time, he fought with someone whose power matched his own, instead of someone he had to protect. It changed everything about how the battle felt. It changed everything about how he felt. When the invaders finally retreated, the mate bond between them, still unmarked since the day he had refused her, settled into place on its own, quiet and certain, the way it should have happened from the very beginning. Kael turned to her in the aftermath, dust and moonlight still settling around them, and did not wait for a formal ceremony this time. "I choose you," he said, in front of the same soldiers, the same elders, the same court that had watched him reject her months before. Not because of the bloodline, not because of what you can do, because of who you are. Elira looked at him for a long moment, weighing the words the way she weighed everything, carefully, without rushing toward comfort she had not yet earned the right to trust. "Say that again in a year," she said, "and I'll believe you." Kael almost smiled. It was fair. He had a great deal to prove, and he understood now that trust was not something a king simply declared into existence. It had to be built, day by day, the same slow way Elira had built her place in Thornmere, without anyone's permission. In time, that is exactly what happened. Thornmere healed from the attacks. The Voss bloodline, once thought lost, was restored to its proper place in the kingdom's history, not as a strange footnote, but as one of its oldest foundations. Kael marked her eventually, but only when she chose it herself, freely, on her own terms, in a quiet ceremony far smaller than the first. Elira did not become queen because the kingdom suddenly discovered she was powerful. She became queen because she had always been holding pieces of Thornmere together quietly, without praise, long before anyone knew her name was worth remembering. The power the old wolves gave her only made everyone else finally see what had been true all along. She had never needed to be strong the way Kael was strong. She had only needed someone willing to look closely enough to notice.